Cara, thank you. I always love learning from you, but just to thank you for hosting that conversation. That meant a lot. Um, okay, so for those of you I don't know, hi to you online. My name's Michaela O'Donnell. I am the executive director of the Max Dupree Center for Leadership at Fuller Seminary, assistant professor of marketplace leadership. Yes, I invented my own title. It's a story for a different day. I am here with my colleague, Dr. Meryl Herr, who is the director. She's passing out markers right now, which makes her, first of all, our favorite person in the room, but she is the director of research and resources at the Dupree Center. The smartest person in any room she's in can do that thing where she's like in the research projects and then knows how to turn that research into resources for real life. She's the star of the show today on the Hype Squad. So I just book me for your Hype Squad in the future. But if you have not talked or met Meryl, you'll definitely want to after this. So let me give you a little context of what we do at the Dupree Center, if you don't know, and kind of what we're up to in the season and what we're going to do in this session. So Fuller Seminary, yeah, it's the Fuller Show, has been in the business of theological education for 75 years. We're celebrating our 75th anniversary this year, largely historically training pastors, missionaries. We got very fancy at one point and started training psychologists, right? Yeah, I know, awesome. Now it's like, please, psychologists, help us all with all the things. About 25 years ago, Fuller started to wonder, especially when you think about it retrospectively, what about all the folks that are never going to come to seminary? How might a seminary serve them? And you started to get all these organic expressions in these places called centers. So we are one of 6 centers at Fuller whose primary charge is to leverage the resources of a seminary for the sake of whatever audience we're pointing straight toward. Talk about a disruption in theological education. Now, we didn't necessarily, and by the way, that work is increasingly not on the periphery, not the adjacent thing that some people do on the side that is fun and interesting, but a really important part of our business model at Fuller. So one of these centers, called the Max Dupree Center for Leadership, is a Max Dupree, longtime CEO of Herman Miller. If you've ever sat in a really nice office chair, that office chair may have been made by the Herman Miller Company. Max was also a longtime CEO of the board chairman of the board at Fuller. I never got to meet Max. He passed away before I came into this role. So I'm always hungry for stories about him. I mean, people tell me stories about him. They tell me these stories of a man who was who he was wherever he was. Just like whether he was doing the CEO thing or in the boardroom or granddad duty, he was Max. And so in essence, that is the thing that we are trying to help leaders across industries do now. And what a world to try and stay whole in, right? What a world to try to stay whole in. We primarily serve marketplace leaders by converting that research that we do and others do into resources for real life. At the heart of the actual resources that we do is a through line of spiritual formation. Our team will call this inner work. Because we think people who are doing their inner work and who are spiritually formed can actually change the world. And we've seen it time and time again. And so we've sort of doubled down on that. Now, why do people come to us and when do they come to us for their spiritual formation? Usually when things are not good, when they're not okay, when things feel upside down. I have just gotten off of a really unique, please do not repeat it, stretch of being on the road for the last couple of weeks. And I've been with leaders across industries in Chicago and Tennessee, Michigan, and now here in Denver. And people have been describing to me like the water that they've been taking on, their most pressing questions, from the CEO of the largest mental health company in Michigan telling me, Michaela, I've only got so many lifeboats and every day I get to have to decide which groups get them and which groups don't. I literally decide that every day, right? To somebody in tech in the Southeast who was like doing the thing, distinctively Christian leadership for Jesus, and got fired because of it. Right? Like, oh, got told that was cute by his CEO. And For those of us who are in theological education, it's the same kind of disruption. I was at a meeting, Greg, you led the meeting, you did a great job. Earlier this spring, we were mapping the pain points of theological educators. DoorDash, Cara, there you go. We were mapping the pain points of theological educators, and the things that came to the top were full. The burnout, right? The sense of isolation, the sense of sometimes in some spaces, the babysitting, like wait a minute, I don't have the grown adults I used to have in my classroom. I'm doing a whole different thing. And mostly the thing I'm being asked to do today is not the thing I signed up for. Like, ooh, that's tough, right? It's in the midst of that the theological education and all these disrupted industries that Meryl and I started thinking to ourselves, wondering aloud, brainstorming. Meryl's been very patient with my wandering imagination. What kind of leaders are we going to need in the coming age? Like, who's gonna guide us when everything is upside down and when the rapids are coming at us and when we don't know what day it is? And so we started asking, what does healthy, faithful, and fruitful leadership look like across industries? This winter, we did 18 focus groups. We had about 100 people responding to those questions. Super interesting. Meryl's going to tell you more about that research. And then we did 40 exemplar interviews this summer, and we're like so fresh in the data analysis. Meryl is very responsible and would tell me that it's too early to report anything. But I've been very excited about some of the early inclinations in there. And it is from that research that then we are starting to pair resources with that. And we now are going to try something. This is not going to be a heady portion. We're here to talk about and think about and live into the spiritual formation of theological educators. We're actually going to do a spiritual formation exercise. All right. So we're going to move from here to like here. Okay, we're going to move from words to pictures. We're going to move from things that are nice and tidy to things that are out there. So that's just kind of your preface, but it's going to be really good. And this thing that Meryl is developing is really, really helpful. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you.